Yeah, we're both completely wrong about this.
Wow,
Again, Warrior
misread.
is, I've said it, he's the really go-to deck for him. He'll play this. He plays this deck very aggressively in tournaments. He really wants to try to develop a big lead and go from there. I am interested to see how he mulligans because I know that when I've watched RDU play, I've seen him keep some really strange cards in his hand. At least from my perspective, when he's playing Warrior in some of these matchups. So if he keeps something like Deathbite and Loatheb, what it really tells me is that he's going to try to push for damage early on in the game. And Shield Block, I think Shield Block is kept here because he doesn't feel like he's going to have time to armor up a bunch, so he wants to burn this Shield Block early and kind of go from there. And again, it's just because a matter of the time constraints he's feeling. But at the same time, he may have kind of been wise to the kind of deck that Numberguy's playing. So something like Shield Block, Shield Slam, really valuable against like a Violet Teacher or an Azure Drake. So that could be something he's thinking in mind as well. But just from my intuition, I would imagine he's going to use it on turn 3 just simply because it's the time to do anything. And I'm just completely wrong. He's going to continue to armor up and build from here. So my read is very, very wrong again on what RDU chooses to do with Warrior. It seems like he plays it differently every single time. I mean, I've seen him be aggressive and I've seen him be really defensive with this deck. So maybe he just mixes up his play to kind of throw his opponent off and really not able to give them a strong impression of what he wants to do.
Oh yeah, well, it's not like he has the greatest hand to be aggressive at the same time too. I think it's an okay way to react at the moment. RDU is also a great Miracle player. He's played hundreds, thousands of games of Miracle. Just ask him, like, what do you think about Miracle matchup versus this? And he'll talk for 15 minutes straight about all the small nuances that you have to know about the matchup. He's even gonna coin armor up. Like, that's how much he values being defensive.
Yeah, it looks really strange, but with the way that he's played so far, it's really congruent with his game plan. So we saw him armor up on turn 2 instead of just jamming Fiery War Axe, because if you take a look at how much damage he was developing, it's 8 from Deathbite, it's 6 from Fiery War Axe. That alone is 14 damage, and then he has a Loatheb in his hand, which is almost certainly going to get him 5 points of damage. So that just right there is 19 points of damage. So, the caveat to that is if you start attacking with the Fiery War Axe right away, it does give your opponent opportunities to get value from Earthring Farseer, and then you have to use a second charge on that. So then the Fiery War Axe, all of its value is negated. But since he chose to armor up, the coin armor up is, again, it's really congruent with his game plan because he wants to have enough natural armor that he can use the second Shield Slam. Now that he's drawn it, it's weighing on his mind a lot more than it was before. When he just had Shield Block, Shield Slam, he's like, my armor is important, but I have Shield Block in case I need to Shield Block, Shield Slam. But when he draws the second one, he wants to have a very high armor total so he can try to get a natural one to go along with his Shield Block.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe RDU keeps his mind where he just feels like he needs to be defensive enough, similar to, when you have Loatheb and you're against Freeze Mage, all you have to do mentality is shut down the ability for them to go off and then be able to be really defensive enough to the point where your opponent can't deal enough damage. He's got great cards. He scales better into the late game. The longer the game goes, the higher chance the Warrior can win because he's got really powerful legendaries coming in. So right. I think RDU playing defensive might be his best chance given his hand. Of course, if you're given like Armorsmith, Cool Taskmaster, Acolytes to start things off, I think you can play a little bit more aggressive to the board. But I think the way RDU's been playing so far has generally been pretty safe.
Yeah, it's something. It is an important note to touch on too. Is that there is like a window of opportunity or an inflection point for the Rogue deck. It's like it gets to one point where it has a very, very peak critical mass, and so it can really launch a big attack versus Warrior. So if Warrior can kind of turtle through that, once it gets over that hill, it's a really big drop off in win rate for Rogue because again they just take control of the game. The Rogue just kind of quite literally runs out of things to do, and since Warrior has so many these scaling late game legendaries, they often don't run out of things to do. It's like the very opposite. It's just like, well, I have powerful stuff and now I have control of the game. So very different aspects to this. I think that early on you're going to see Warrior typically take advantage of the game, and then somewhere in the mid game to mid to late, the Rogue has a really strong attack point, and then outside of that, if the Warrior stabilizes, they typically win. And that's kind of what we're seeing now too. Like he's deflected almost everything that Numberguy's done, and Numberguy down to just a couple cards left. Of course, he hasn't drawn Auctioneer, which is a really important card in this matchup. But once you speak of the devil, once you get to like the 15 card mark, you'll have drawn Auctioneer like a very large percentage of the time. So that's really why this deck is able to be so successful with the 30 card decks and 2 copies of cards versus a lot of traditional card games where it's 60 card decks and 4 copies of cards. Makes a big difference, and he's about to chain off a lot of spells here. Conceal, and on the Auctioneer, there's a prep, Eviscerate, and this is where that timing attack comes in. If RDU can manage to weather this storm, I think he sees a big win rate, but this is going to be a tough one.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think so. You know, you have the Lotheb to shut it down too. So, as you were saying, like this is the only chance for Warrior to climb back. But all defensiveness that RDU has done, will it be paying off? Because there are ways for Numberguy to win, despite the fact that his Gadzan can't draw. It's still a 4/4 body that can attack. It still gets in damage.
Yeah, every point of damage really mattering in this too. And so, fortunately for Numberguy, he does have an Azure Drake that he can play to kind of keep the ball rolling, but he does have more options too. Like he can still kill this Lotheb and try to keep his Auctioneer going as well. I mean, it's gonna deal effectively 8 more points of damage. Wow, he picks up another Auctioneer too. That's a really important one. So this Death Spite extremely likely to run into this Auctioneer, but you know, RDU's life total is going to be in mind. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Grommash come out here to try to buy a couple of extra points of life and maybe even save that Death Spite to kind of be more aggressive.
Yeah, I think
that's exactly what it's going to do.
Yep. You don't want to rely on the Rag RNG. Plus, this might give you effectively 9 more health. Depends on how your opponent chooses to kill it. Azure Drake Eviscerate removes it, but is there a better play here for Numberguy? He's looking at his deck as if he wants to start going off with some draws with Auctioneer, perhaps digging to a potential win. I don't think Numberguy is running Leroy, correct? He's running the Violet Teacher?
Who did we see that was running Leroy yesterday? We did see someone running Leroy yesterday. I don't know exactly who it was. I don't think it was Numberguy, though.
There was a person running Leroy with Alex Straza, right? And then Shadow Step combinations with Harrison Jones.
I think so, yeah. This is going to be much more defensive. So Azure Drake, Eviscerate going to be the play, the extra spell damage, making sure it can kill a 5 health Grommash. And again, he's got a board developed. It's a matter of RDU can get past this. And of course, the exact same thing he was thinking last turn was, how do I deal with this without paying too much life? And so at this point, I would imagine that RDU doesn't anticipate a second Auctioneer here, but it certainly is still very possible. This looks to me like it's going to be Ragnaros if he does this.
Right.
Wish Ragnaros to get sapped.
Get sapped, but at least there's nothing on the board that can continue to push damage like Van Cleef or whatever creature that's usually there.
Yeah, it's going to be Ragnaros and armor up. And it's going to hit the board, 8 points of damage, but...
Where's Ragnaros going to hit? Oh, man.
And it hits RDU!
Wow, the exact target he was wanting. That is some good luck for RDU.
RNG. This game's all RNG. This is another, again, really big turn. He's actually going to go with Violet Teacher here, and if he goes to Violet Teacher, it means because he feels like he doesn't actually need cards to push for the win. He's just going to overdevelop his board and kind of go from there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Cold Blood this turn, but I wouldn't be surprised if he held it either. Just differences of plan is all it would be. So he's going to hold Cold Blood to make sure that he can get the 4 points of damage in as he sees fit, and RDU again is really back against the wall, really needing that Whirlwind effect right now. So his next draw is pretty important. Oh, Harrison Jones, not a good one at the moment.
Is there an opportunity to brawl here?
Well, here's what I'm curious about. So brawling can leave you in a position like where your opponent gets a 3-3 or a 1-1 out of it. I'm wondering if you actually win this game more than 25% of the time when you brawl here, even if your opponent gets this 1-1. So a really fortunate brawl. His Tazdingo does kind of stick to the board now, but what I'm thinking of, this seems really desperate, and I don't know if this is the right play or not. This is just something that I would think about and kind of keep in the back of my mind. Is it worth it to play Tazdingo and brawl so you can try to clear everything off the board? Because again, are you winning more than 25% of the time, even if the 1-1 wins the brawl?
Well, now that there's a token for the Cold Blood, I think there is merit to that discussion. Oh my goodness!
That looks like.
Wait, is that game?
Yep.
Is that game? Oh my god! I can't believe it.
Get him, Sousy Deckhand. Punish him. That's one of my favorite
sneaky
cards.
Lethal.
Oh wait a minute! No, it's not lethal. It's a 1. Wait, what the heck?
Oh man, admirable! I thought he had it.
Oh geez, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, that is embarrassing. But you know what? It's okay because the position is still pretty hard to come back from. There's no Alex Strauss, and even if it is, you still have to kill the board.
Yeah, even if he had Alex Strauza, this is still just 15 damage he's staring out on the board. So he'd have to sweep this and gain a bunch of armor. This is effective lethal, so...
yeah.
I don't even know like what warrior cards would win the game here.
It would have to be some combination of Whirlwind Execute, Shield Block.
2 shield blocks.
Yeah, 2 shield blocks, and then like a unstable ghoul. Just
of how this matchup works. I actually, at WCI, I played against Savitz, and I was playing Miracle Rogue, and Savitz is really aggressive with his warrior deck against me. This is also Numberguy. He chose to switch his deck. For those of you who are just joining us, or maybe you need to recap on the rules, this best of 5 format is a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. It is 4 decks with a ban, but the winner in this tournament can actually opt to switch their deck, so they can switch to any unlocked deck that they still have, and that's what Numberguy choosing to exercise that option here. And I would think that this is the matchup he wanted, was to try to get Hunter versus Shaman, and Hunter's even just good against both of the RDU's remaining decks. The other one's Handlock. So when RDU chooses to use Shaman here, I don't think that Shaman is really even that bad versus Hunter. If you can stabilize the board position, you have a really big push in the mid game, and you can lock down the board. So this is going to be, again, one of the differences of opinions. Back when Hunter was really powerful and had the 2-mana Unleash the Hounds, we saw a lot of the Sunshine Hunter builds. Darkwanics actually told me he thought that Shaman was favored over Hunter then, and he played it in one of the 2P qualifier events for the Europe versus China, and he played Shaman the entire way through and actually finished with a 5-2 record, which was good enough to put him into a position where he could qualify for the event, I think, if I remember that correctly. But I remember he had a 5-2 record, and he was leading with Shaman the whole day. And that's what sort of tipped me off to the matchup to begin with, because they were so focused on developing the board and getting repetitive damage that if you could 1-for-1 them the entire way and then hex their Savannah Jaime, you were usually in good shape to win the game.
yeah, and if you didn't get that Rockbiter start from the Shaman and answered the Undertaker right away, it could have been disastrous. 'Cause look at the hand. There's 4 Death Vows followed up. That's a 5-6 Undertaker if it doesn't get checked. So a very important start here for RDU. He wants to test for this trap to see what it is exactly. He does have Feral Spears, though. Another great answer to the early game aggression from Hunter.
This is really strange that he actually doesn't check if this is Explosive Trap first. He may have done his research and just know that Numberguy's not running Explosive Trap, which I don't remember if he is or not. But regardless of which, you want to make that attack with Harvest Golem first, because if it is Explosive Trap, now both of your minions are vulnerable to just a straight-up attack across this board. So the one thing he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want it to be Snake Trap, because when it's Snake Trap, he's going to potentially fall too far behind to be able to recover this board state. So he, with Feral Spirit and Flametongue Totem, there's a really good chance he can actually just turn this into a race. I think it's
and he has Doomhammer too.
Yep. Which I keep every single time. Wow, so he does have Explosive Trap.
Wow.
So this was just strictly a mistake from RDU's perspective. He should have attacked with the Harvest Golem first. And now this, of course, this play is very telltale of the fact that Explosive Trap is on the board. But even despite that, it's a little bit risky for him to attack one of his Feral Spirits into this Loot Hoarder before he triggers an Explosive Trap, because the other one's Snake Trap.
I feel like triggering the trap to get it before the weapon comes out is a high priority here for Shaman.
I think it is, and I think he's also going to stick to his same game plan where he is aware that that's Snake Trap, so he's going to try to turn this into a race instead of trying to pick apart his opponent's board. So Numberguy on 3 cards, it's a matter of whether or not he can put together, again, just the winning combination of pieces. Because Loot Hoarder is going to be dealing 2 damage over and over again, but RDU is going to start scaling. I mean, there's a potential for Doomhammer to come out, Flametongue with Defender of Argus, so, a big push available from him as well. So RDU a little bit behind on life, but maybe he can make it up. Like just one swing turn with Defender of Argus can really change this game. And that's what it's going to be about. These next couple of draws, I think, are really important.
At the same time, these targets for Defender aren't exactly the beefiest around. They're easily picked apart by Eagle Horn Bow and a simple attack from the Loot Order. Then you can continue to push. So as much as you would like to play Defender and start taunting up and pushing damage, it's not exactly the ideal targets.
Sure. I'm curious if there's any merit to lightning bolting the Loot Hoarder here, or if he just needs that to actually extend his reach.
If you lightning bolt, you restrict your mana for Fire Elemental, but you can play Doomhammer.
Yeah, the thing is though, you protect your Harvest Golem this way, so your opponent doesn't
Right.
have a direct threat onto your board. So
True.
so it's whether or not Lightning Bolt is worth a 3/2 Harvest Golem here is sort of what I'm thinking, and I think it
With
is.
taunt.
Like I would, yeah, 3/2 Harvest Golem with taunt. Like I think a Lightning Bolt is just more than worth that because you get in the 3 damage from the Harvest Golem, and you've protected your Harvest Golem potentially from that threat. So. Not exactly the same thing, but very akin to it. So when he does it this way, it looks to me like he just wants to get Fire Elemental active as soon as possible. I would be
Might not be a
astonished
bad
if this
idea.
Eagle Horn bow did not hit this 1/3 bow.
Yeah, you already have a trap out. So
I'm sorry,
get
this
charge. So,
yeah, the 1/3 totem. I said bow. If the bow did not hit the totem, I would be I'd be really confused about this. It's using the hero power. I don't think attacking the Harvest Golem is that bad. I don't think attacking his face is that bad either. You still have a damage lead. This will put more damage on the board though, so something to think about. He still is, he's a little bit reluctant to attack your Haunted Creeper, and even if he has Lightning Storm, he's going to attack your Haunted Creeper anyway to make sure he can clear the board.
right. So you're missing a damage if you go for a trade here. If it's the consequence is about the same.
Yeah.
But he does take another body off. So there's
I think
that.
it's a good
And there
idea.
is no Lightning Storm from RDU.
Add power to your board, take power away from your opponents. It's usually a pretty good play.
Yep.
Are you going to continue to stick to this game plan? And once you've committed to this, like deviating your play this is where a lot of people like sometimes they end up losing games. Is once you've kind of committed to a game plan, it's very rare that I feel like you can deviate from that because you've just really put your eggs in one basket. So when you start creating that incongruency in your game, that's where you slip up. You spent the first 5 turns getting to this point. Why change it now? Unless you think the game's going to go more than like another 5 turns or so.
Sure, makes sense to me. I think RDU is also trying to calculate if he can set up a 2-turn lethal, which he can if all of his stuff survives and Numberguy chooses to go for face and opts not to kill command. But I think you have to start picking apart the board. The question becomes then, what do you snipe with this Fire Elemental? And he chooses a Spectral Spider and allows his opponent to have a beast.
Yeah, I think what he's doing here is he's trying to hope that his opponent just doesn't he doesn't want his opponent to have a good beast draw off of this web spinner. And the trade-off for that, of course, is that you let your opponent have beast. So if he has kill command active, it is going to be able to trade for the Fire Elemental, but at the same time, if he kill commands this turn, he can't play Savannah Highmane, which Numberguy didn't have, but he did pick up. But it's something that's certainly in RDU's mind when your opponent's only got 2 cards in their hand. You are thinking, like, how often is my opponent going to have Savannah Highmane here? Because last turn on turn 6, we saw there were, like, multiple taunts on the board. Eagle Horn Bow got picked up. There was no way to push for damage. Savannah Highmane could have been a very easy way for him to lose the game if RDU had something like Hex. So even if he had Highmane, I think there's a pretty good chance he wouldn't have played it. So RDU kind of, a twofold effect. If my opponent held on the Savannah Highmane, the Fire Elemental is a better play onto the regular beast. It gives him one less chance to draw a significant beast. And if he drops Savannah Highmane this turn, maybe I can actually just lethal him.
Well,
yeah, I like
if
the
he
kill
goes
command.
for this
Oh my
play,
gosh, wait a minute.
that's game. Because I think RDU has enough burst, doesn't he? With
Looks
Lightning
like
Bolts,
16.
Flame Tongues, and Lightning.
It looks like 20 damage to me. 8 plus 5.
We have to make up for what happened last game, Admirable. I think
that's 20 damage.
Yeah,
that's definitely 20 damage. Oh my goodness. The 8-point damage, the most satisfying feeling in Hearthstone.
He's got his own kill command with Lava Burst.
Yep.
You kill command me, I kill command you. RDU's tied up the series.
Very, very well played. Really recognizing early that he can actually race his opponent. And this is another spot where, like, you can kind of turn Snake Trap into a liability on your opponent's side, is if you have the ability to bit less of a favor to actually 2 your opponent than Handlock is. So I would try to queue up Shaman here first, hope that my opponent queued up Handlock. And if your opponent didn't queue up Handlock, you're gonna have to play the Rogue anyway. Like, say if your Warlock lost, you'd have to beat this Rogue deck with Shaman anyway. So you might as well just try to pick it off here and go into your last match having a little bit more confidence than knowing that you're gonna have what I would consider a bad matchup at some point.
Confidence and might as well throw out that. It's like it seems like a lot of the rationale for being able to approach the series, and it's interesting because a lot of people don't carry that mindset. They're just, well, this deck's good against that. I play it on ladder all the time, so why not just equalize it and making sure that I get a good matchup? But
wow,
I like the way you phrase it here.
Yeah, I think confidence is a big issue. in any competition. It's like if you don't feel like you're going to win, you very often are not going to win. I can tell you that. Picks up Auctioneer straight away, too. That's a really big draw from Numberguy. We actually saw he kept Backstab, and he kept Shiv in his opening hand, and I'm kind of curious about that. When he does that, it means to me that he feels like it's very dependent on being able to keep your opponent's board clean so that you can scale into your mid game and try to take advantage of the board.
Yeah, that's interesting because we haven't seen RDU run like Undertaker in the Shaman deck, right? Like some Shamans have been putting it inside their decks, Kalento, a few other people as well, and they get that Death Rattle Shaman snowballing as fast as possible, and you use lots of your burst to finish up the game. This is, by the way, the best response that Miracle Rogue usually has to Harvest Golem. Just shivving, killing off this Harvest Golem, and then clearing the board. This is a pretty good start overall for Numberguy. RDU can't get anything to stick.
Yeah, I'm curious why he actually chose not to play Blood Mage this turn. Like, he could have Blood Mage Backstab, use his dagger, and then he has a kind of consistent threat on the board. Like, I understand that you want to save Blood Mage for some Blade Flurry turns sometimes, or even some Vandal Knives turns, but, you know, Sans and Earthshock, the Blood Mage is going to get a ton of value in a position like that. So, I think it's a little bit fortunate, actually, to draw this Violet Teacher so he can start getting some pressure out, but even if your opponent Earthshocks your Blood Mage, it's not that bad because you do have Violet Teachers in your deck. And Earthshocking a Violet Teacher, you know, it's not the best response, but it can shut off a lot of the potential value you can generate. I would have liked to see him use Blood Mage last turn.
Well, like you said, it brings up versatility. It can easily get Earthshocked as well, like you mentioned. So I think all things considered, Numberguy wants to keep his options more flexible because he does have Eviscerate. He doesn't have the mana to do Azure Drake Eviscerate just yet. So keeping this Thanos will pay off right now because he has that 5 damage spell.
Yep. So Lightning Storm going to be pretty good here. And this is another situation where I'm curious is RDU going to try to deny a card from his opponent, or is he going to try to develop his board? So this is a little bit of a fork in the road. So Lightning Storm, I imagine, is going to be happening here. I mean, there's a chance that he just Feral Spirits and uses Harvest Golem and tries to extend his Lightning Storm. He's going to go for it straight away, which means he is going to be developing. And now it's a question of either Harvest Golem or Feral Spirit. I imagine it's going to be Harvest Golem.
Yeah.
He wants to.
You want to get this.
He wants to stagger his Overlord, his Overload, and he also would rather get more value out of the Harvest Golem now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, being able to manage your mana is so important as a Shaman player. The Doomhammer can come out next turn, even though you Lightning Stormed the previous one. Versus if you went for Feral Spirits, you'd be left with 3 mana. That gives you just enough to Flame Tongue Totem and remove something on the board. Versus Doomhammer, you have the Rockbiter in hand, get the damage out, start pressuring the Rogue. And like you mentioned, 22 damage just with 1 Rockbiter throughout the course of 4 turns. That could be RDU's ticket to potentially winning this game if he can shut down what Miracle Rogue's trying to do.
Yep. Wow, he's going to Doomhammer straight away, too. He's not wasting any time. He keeps it every single time, and he's going to start going for face. RDU feels like, oh, what the heck? Whoa, that is not what I expected to happen.
Well, he respects the spell power. Again, RDU is a guy who's played a lot of Miracle Rogue, so I think he understands what he needs to do to shut down the deck, but that is a pretty costly trade, losing 4 health and 2 damage to the face.
Yeah, that feels really weird to me. Like, if that was going to be your plan, I feel like that Flame Tongue Totem was just a better option. Because you don't overload yourself, you don't pay 4 health. You develop your Doomhammer this way, but like, I don't know if that's better than just the alternative, which is just getting a Flame Tongue active. Because even if your opponent's spending removal on Flame Tongue, you have a second one behind it. It's allowing you to totem a little bit more. Because now, gosh, I don't know. I think I'd really like to know what his thought was on that turn. Because he also played that turn pretty fast. Like, he went pretty straight away from Doomhammer. So he's very confident in the fact that Doomhammer was a better play, but I feel like Doomhammer allows the board to kind of slip out of control a little bit more. And we see the Auctioneer coming out now. And lots of card draws being available, lots of damage coming across the board, and now I think it may be a little bit too late for RDU to pick up the pieces from here. He's going to get stuck with Flame Tongues in his hand.
It's too bad. He's got so much damage. Second Lightning Bolt. He's got to put up a wall of defenses, but I think with 2 saps, unless he removes these creatures, especially like Lotheb, he could be looking at a way to just die the next turn.
Am I just going to Earthshock each one?
Yep. It's too bad he also didn't get spell powered as well. The spell power would have allowed him to efficiently remove. And now, like, he doesn't have a response to Van Cleef. If any of these minions stick, though, double Flame Tongue with Rockbiter gives him a small little opening.
Yeah. Oh, there's another Auctioneer. Numberguy's actually 1 damage off of killing his opponent right now.
Right. But then he has to draw. He has to draw while still having the mana to do all this, what he wants.
Yep. There's a Conceal. So if RDU could actually, if he lives through this turn with stuff on the board, he's actually going to win, but I don't think he's going to live with stuff on the board. There's Eviscerate.
Oh,
he doesn't have
mana to cast mana. Oh, he does. He just
he does.
Face.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, he just uses Dagger. I wasn't even considering 3 more damage. So that's going to be game 2 over to Numberguy. Pretty good sequence of draws. RDU kind of, I don't really know about his sequence that game. I think it's a little bit too quick, and that's pretty risky. Just I don't know. I don't see the Doomhammer as like a life pain card. You don't really use it to attack minions that often. I think he should just use Flame Tongue there, because even if Flame Tongue is going to die to like a poison or a backstab or something like that, you have a second one in reserve, and then that allows you to get through actual minions that do something instead of having like an enhancement effect. So a very different line than I would have taken. He gets punished for it this time, but that's not to say that it was the wrong play. I mean, versus the range of options your opponent had forward to a Zoo deck, because he had Leopard Gnome Power Overwhelming, used all of his mana, used all of his cards, and he had Soulfire to finish me on a turn where I was about to clear his board, drop some Moltons, and taunt him up. But outside of some fantastic starts, Zoo will typically fall underneath Handlock, and he's actually struggling whether or not he wants to keep this Voidwalker in his opening hand. I think he should be mulliganing this for Death Rattle if he's got an Undertaker.
Yeah, and there's a lot of easy ways to stretch reach for the Rogue to backstab Undertaker. Which, by the way, the Rogue player, I'm not sure how much he senses that this is Zoo, right? He kept Cold Blood, which is, I think he wants to go for his backstabs and his deadly poisons.
RDU draws what has to be one of the worst cards in his deck right now. Second Doomguard was definitely really bad. So no action on Numberguy's side. Second Voidwalker. Not a bad board position to be in, though. He does a few points of damage out. And I imagine we're going to see SI7 Agent here.
Yep.
So he wants to. I think RDU wants to pick up like something like Soulfire straight away. He wants Soulfire and a 1-drop.
He needs something. I guess the nice caveat to the Soulfire 1-drop is that he gets to guaranteed keep a Doomguard, but losing both of them is...
Mortal Coil. Okay, so when I see Mortal Coil, I feel like this Zoo deck is really aimed at beating something like Hunter.
Yes.
Mortal Coil is a card that I think functions fantastic in that matchup, and against everything else, it kind of struggles to really get a lot of work done. And this board is about to start getting picked apart. This is really bad news for RDU. These kinds of starts are the best starts that Rogue can have. They don't necessarily need backstab. If they're going first, backstab is fantastic because that's the way they use, or that's what they use to activate the SI7 agent. But when you're going second, you just have coin for it, so it gets online a turn earlier and really starts pressuring straight away. So RDU, he's going to life tap again. Haunted Creeper is going to come down, and I imagine this Leopard Gnome is going to go for face because he's got to find a way to put together some damage, but not a good spot to be in. He's actually just going to trade it away. So really valuing protecting his minions here and not taking too much damage on his side of the board as well.
I think so, because there's Knife Juggler in, so Knife Juggler can potentially get some good spray damage. And you have Mortal Coil, so there's lots of options if your Haunted Creeper stays up, and then you see a minion being dropped here, whether it's Farseer, whether it's another SI7, etc. And Numberguy actually comes up on an awkward turn, despite having a really nice curve in the beginning of the game. It's not as simple as dropping his Van Cleef with some big combos, because he wants to use his spells with his Gadgetzan and being able to go off here.
Wow, RDU going to put together some really nice damage this turn. Chooses to use a Doomguard. He actually discards what I would consider two of the better cards to discard. Mortal Coil for sure, one of them. Well, discarding the Doomguard, it's hard enough for Rogue to kill one of these. And if you look at your turn 6, you're going to life tap and then drop the Direwolf Alpha and Knife Juggler in the same turn. Not in that order, of course.
Sure.
But I think the one Doomguard is plenty, and that outside of this, he just wants to continue to dump cards onto the board and make it so hard for his opponent to actually recover.
I feel like Doomguard is like the only chance for Zoo to pressure Miracle Rogue enough in the early stages of the game for a win if they have a hand like this. So having 2 would have been insane, but one thing to back up what you're saying is that there is a sap. So if you sapped Doomguard, which is a little bit more resistant to it, but he had a second Doomguard, there's not likely that he'd be able to get both of them out.
Well, that's sort of my point too, is that like Rogue has to invest so much in actually killing a Doomguard that sap is usually one of their plays against it. So if he kept the other Doomguard, and this got sapped, what would be happening instead is he would be going into his turn forced to play another Doomguard and discard the rest of his cards. So in this order, instead, he can just develop his board again, then still have Doomguard afterwards to redevelop it. So I mean, it's unfortunate that his Doomguard gets discarded because he doesn't have access to draw another one. But I think in terms of his hand context, it's much better to discard his Doomguard. That's what I think anyway. But I'm often wrong, so who knows?
Prep first, implying he wants to go for Van Cleef. No, Gadget Sand is the lead.
Yeah, he's definitely going to sap here.
Yeah, that's his best chance to buy time.
So RDU now, I mean, he does have a choice now. He has to kill this. He has to kill this Auctioneer somehow. I still think he wants to draw Soulfire. Maybe Power Overwhelming is a better draw than Soulfire is right now. We don't know if he's running it though.
Yeah, he has Mortal Coil, so he had to make sacrifices somewhere.
Yeah, he's actually just going to jam down to the Doomguard and make sure that this doesn't get value. It's painful to do that too. I've been in that spot, but Auctioneer is just too scary. You cannot let that guy live.
There's still no easy way to kill off this Doomguard. Wow. Despite the fact that Numberguy holds 7 cards, and there's usually ways like Eviscerate, another SI7 agent for you to pick it off, there's just no way.
He's going to pay 5 health if he plays that Blood Mage. Unless... I wouldn't sap right now. You definitely wouldn't sap right now.
Nope.
Like this, develop your dagger, go from here. So you fall low on life total, but again, I think he feels pretty safe overall. He's going to be able to weather a pretty big minion storm from his opponent. And there's no access to more Doomguards, so the direct damage he's fading at this point is Power Overwhelming and Soulfire and RDs. He's going off 2 cards a turn, but he'll start to fall. Wow, I definitely think the Dark Iron Dwarf is one of the best cards he could have drawn right now.
Sure, it's a heavy minion.
Yep.
It's got good buff stats. It's still putting on pressure, and as long as Numberguy falls to, as long as he falls into that 4 range, and there's no way for him to bounce back, there's still always the possibility of just tapping the Soulfire for the win.
Backstab was the best draw in his deck, right? Because now he can play Azure Drake, backstab the Dark Iron Dwarf, and just sap back the Harvest Golem.
Yeah, I was originally thinking about cards like Fan of Knives, but when you put it that way, I think it makes a lot of sense. Because now you have the perfect mana to do it.
Whoa! That is not what I expected. I wonder why he did it that way. Well, he picks up an Auctioneer, but I don't know if
he's gonna sap the 4/4. It costs a little bit more mana.
I still don't even know if that's better than just playing Azure Drake. Like even after you've drawn the Auctioneer, it was a second backstab.
But now, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he just wants to keep drawing cards. Picks up a Preparation. That's going to protect his Auctioneer if he wants it to. I think that when he passes here, he actually kind of wants his Auctioneer to get Soulfired. And if that was the case, I would have liked to see Preparation into a Cold Blood. Like, why wouldn't you want to protect your Auctioneer in this position? Already, you got to do what you got to do. Just jam everything on the board and hope that you can get through this. And now Numberguy is going to draw a lot of cards, so he's got to find some removal spells for what's on the board, but when you're drawing this many cards, I don't think it's that difficult to do.
Wow, he's got ways to stack his board. He's going to get Eviscerate eventually.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily, but we'll see what happens.
Sure.
There's Southsea Deckhand. That's going to take care of the Flame Imp. He might actually Cold Blood that instead and take care of the Dark Iron Dwarf and then use the Auctioneer to kill the Flame Imp.
Well, first you evaluate. Oh, I guess he's going to go for Van Cleef then.
That's what it looks like to me. Looks to me like you're going to concede or Cold Blood this Earthen Ring Farseer in this spot. I don't know. Maybe he just feels comfortable on 9 health.
Not
The screen is frozen, so I can see what's going on. Maybe it was Numberguy.
He's gonna trade into this. Oh,
he just wanted to make a 12 Van Cleef. RDU draws 2 Nerubian eggs. That has to be
pretty brutal.
The worst draws in his deck, and that's going to result in lethal damage for Numberguy. He's going to win this series 3-1, a very close game of Zoo. I think a couple of those draws, or that backstab was really important in that last game. I think if that would have been like a minion or like another Cold Blood or something like that, this game would have been very different.
Yeah, really well done by Numberguy to take the series.